Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. It's another beautiful day and another video in my series of garden design. Today we're going to talk about landscape structures. Now, I don't have a lot of structures to show you on my property. I don't generally see the need for them on this small of a property, but we're going to discuss them anyway. So what is a landscape structure? It could be anything. It could be a shed, it could be a pathway, it could be a pergola or an arbor or deck, or a patio even. So when you think of landscape structures, one of the first things you need to think of is, what are you going to use it for? Is it really necessary? Where is it located in the flow of traffic on your property? So make sure that it's situated in where it's going to be used most efficiently. For example, if you're going to go to the expense of building a pergola, think about, what are you going to use it for? How often are you going to use it? Do you have a place that is convenient in the flow of traffic on your property that you can have a pergola? The reason I say you need to think about these things is I had a client, it was a landscape maintenance client several years back, that was complaining about a splash pad that they had put onto their property years before. They had decided to put in a splash pad because they had several young children, and the children loved to go to the parks to the splash pads, and they thought, well, this would be perfect to have on the property. Well, the kids never ended up using it, and the expense of taking it out so that they could put usable area in was more expensive than actually putting it in. So think about the use down the lines and the expense of it. Another thing to think about is the climate on your property and the climate of where you want to put this structure. One example is, let's say you want to put in a pergola, and the only way to face it is where the sun shines directly into the pergola. Is there a way to shade it? Are you going to have too much sun? Is it going to be too hot in there? If you want to put a pergola up where you grow vines over the top, what kind of vines can you grow if the pergola can only be situated in the shade? Another thing to think about is, you see around me, we live in an area with lots of snow. You have to think about snow. What's going to happen in the winter? If you're going to build a structure with a flat roof, will it hold the snow load that may happen? What about winds through the area? Are you going to be able to build or situate a structure so it's not as affected by the winds that may happen in the area? Another thing to think about is your paths and where they go. Are they going to be utilized in the winter? If you're going to need to shovel them in the winter, be sure to build them out of a material that can be shoveled. Gravel or crushed stone paths are great paths, but very difficult to shovel in the wintertime if you need to shovel them. You also need to look at easements. What are the rules in your city and in your neighborhood? Do you have easements on your property of how close a structure can be located to the property lines? What are those easements? Will that still work with your structure? Where are your utility lines? You need to call in blue stakes and make sure you're not putting a structure directly over utility lines. Are you going to be able to build your irrigation so that that area is usable for a structure? The last thing you need to think about when putting structures on your property is the materials that you use. Don't use the cheapest materials when you build your structures. They're supposed to be the longest lasting parts of your property. If you use cheap materials and you have to go in and tear it out, think about the cost of deconstruction of that area. Also, when you put in structures, put them in first, if at all possible, or at least make an area for them first. Because when you decide, if you put in your landscape and then decide to put in a structure, the construction of your structure is going to ruin the landscape in the area around it that you already have put in. Then you're just going to have to redo that landscape also, which adds to the expense. So think about the expense down the line, when you decide when to add your structures. So I challenge you to go look at your property, look at the different areas, think about what you would need to use a structure for, how often you would use it. Look at all the areas you have on your property and then think about the environmental issues in those areas. See if a structure would be a good addition to your landscape. So go out, enjoy this beautiful weather. I know it's cold, but I think the snow is absolutely gorgeous, and have a wonderful garden adventure.